Welcome everyone to the MJSA webinar series. Today we are talking about responsibility and sustainable practices in the jewelry industry. We have a number of very timely topics to discuss, and I have some incredible guests here with me to talk about that. So I will introduce them in the order they are on my Hollywood Squares screen. First, we have Rob Bates. He is the news director of JCK. And we have Susan Wheeler, who is the founder of the Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference and the Responsible Jewelry Transformative. And we have Dave Siminski, who's vice president of sales and marketing of United Precious Metals and is heavily involved in their certification schemes. So these are my guests, and we've got a lot to talk about. I would like to encourage our audience to please post questions in the chat box if there are things you'd like to hear us discussing. We would love to be discussing them. And I guess we'll just get going. So I'd like to start by asking the three of you to say just the thing that's most on your mind at this moment in the jewelry industry as it relates to responsible sourcing. Which topic keeps you up at night or keeps jumping into your head during the day?
I'll start unless Susan wants to.
Go ahead, Rob.
Okay. Yeah, obviously, I would say Russia and the idea that right now, the industry has not progressed to a point where we can track diamonds throughout the supply chain. And we do have this issue where it's somewhat likely that Russian mined diamonds will be banned from the United States. And it's a real problem for the industry because there is not a lot of origin tracking or ways to tell origin. So that's probably the biggest issue for me. It's certainly what I've been working on most of the week. And I don't think it's an issue with any easy answers or that will ever be completely solved. That said, I think we could probably do a lot better than we're doing right now.
Okay. Susan, which issue's on your mind?
Yes, the issue of I want to see us stop funding the war with Russia through gold and diamonds. That's the number one issue, but I have another issue that's number one or number two, I guess, but equally up there. And we want to be able to stop the PL 490 law in Brazil that's going through Congress on, I think it's April 22nd, that would allow gold mining on indigenous territories in the Amazon rainforest.
Okay. Dave, what's on your mind?
What keeps me up at night, what keeps United up at night is there's just not enough recycled metal under the definition recycled in the pipeline to feed the jewelry industry. Recycled is just, that term is being used, almost used and abused at this point. And the problem is the recycled metal has to come from what's called second life, resourcing, scrap. There is not enough metal in the pipeline of every jewelry manufacturer, trade shop, designer, caster, domestically, or let alone all of North America, including Mexico, to feed that pipeline. So there's going to be a real issue, and it's already happening, of how you're going to get gold under those definitions from, let it be the RJC or other certifications, to basically feed everyone, because there's just not enough metal out there.
Okay. All right. So I'm going to propose that we jump into the Russian issue first. I'd actually like a little bit of audience feedback. I'd like to know how you guys are feeling. What's your concern regarding the presence of Russian gold and diamonds in jewelry supply chains since the invasion began? Just to get a sense of where your heads are. And Susan, maybe you could start by sharing the work we just did recently on the Russian gold letter.
So yes, thank you, Andrea. The Global Transparency Letter is one that was put together right kind of as the invasion began, because we looked at how many billions of dollars Russia has stockpiled in gold, and seeing that gold is not only what we use, but also a commodity. There's obviously the concern that they are going to be able to use gold in multiple ways to fund the war. And we put this letter together and had Andrea, you know the stats, over 100 jewelers signed it, 45 Ukrainians, and the list is still growing. We also have been on the phone with senators who have a bill that seems to have paused a little bit early on stopping the purchase of Russian gold. So I think everybody needs to be aware of the threat of gold going through the jewelry industry supply as much as diamonds. And the countries where we manufacture, India, definitely, and China seem to be colluding, India is, in giving open avenues to the jewelry to be buying Russian gold and working with the Russians to have a just openly flowing right into our jewelry supply chain. So I think it's important that everybody be aware of it, especially those who are buying goods manufactured in India right now. And I would say stop.
It's some of those numbers you were referring to. I don't think a lot of people realize that jewelry is the second largest marketplace for gold internationally. So investment gold represents 46.5 or 46.6% of the transactions in international gold. Jewelry's right up there at 36.8%. And then the next gold markets are way down at central banks at 8.58% of international gold and tech at 7.95% of international gold. So when the investment markets are being monitored very closely, as they are with the sanctions, where's the next likely place for gold to flow? It's the jewelry industry. And Russia was sitting on a stockpile we know of I want to say 2,300 metric tons of gold, or somewhere north of $140 billion worth of gold, just in their gold stockpiles. Then they have another 7,000 metric tons of gold underground that they're actively mining. And then they have mining interests in multiple countries. And we learned when we were preparing that gold letter that they have increased their buying activity of gold from countries like Venezuela. So Russia clearly sees gold as a way to fund this aggression. And the question is, how do we keep it out of the jewelry industry? So, but Dave, you were saying there's, so recycled gold is one thing that people think about, but you're saying there's not enough recycled metal to buy if everybody turned to it. Why is that?
Well, because recycled metal comes from either the byproduct of a manufacturing process, or what happens, it comes from the scrap industry, let it be pawn shops or jewelry manufacturers. Well, the jewelry manufacturers, at least I get the ones for North America, and even India to a point, because of the amount of business we do in India, the thirst for gold is humongous. I mean, the jewelry industry is going through an 18-month, I would say, boom. Mm-hmm. So how are you going to feed that, right? That's really the big problems. How are you going to feed the industry? And then what happens with a couple of the major refineries that got in trouble here in the last couple of years that brought in a bunch of that gold from Central and South America. I mean, they got in trouble for it. They got sanctioned for it. They lost their LBMA status. But also, too, is a lot of that gold that came from Central and South, it's no longer there. So it's not even being fed through the state. So where is the gold going to come from for the jewelry industry to keep manufacturing? I mean, that's the biggest part of it. And that's why it just, we, like I said, we struggle with it. We don't do any business, and I would say I would speak for most refiners from Russia to the United States when it comes to refining and all that stuff. The shipping and insurance is what kills you. So what happens is very rarely are they taking bars back from Russia in the United States from a jewelry process, to buy and all that stuff. The struggle, and Andrea, as we've spoken, basically at MJSA, is investment bars are almost needed to help supply the jewelry industry gold to manufacture. Now, investment bars can be used, obviously, like Susan was saying, for to launder, to do all that type of stuff. So there's a fine balance there. But we always keep going back to is, how are we going to feed this industry with good gold under the broad brush of recycled? We have many manufacturers in India who want to buy gold from us because they want the certificate, let it be from SES, from RJC, that it's all been audited, clean, and all that stuff. But I keep going back to it. It's a struggle for us because the industry, all the people involved on this screen, is doing unbelievably well. And back in 2010, when gold was 1950, there was scrap everywhere. You didn't have to buy gold anyway. It was coming out of the woodwork. Everyone was, we buy gold, gas stations, supermarkets, everything. Go 12 years later, 2022. Gold's 1950, and the gold's not flowing in.
Well, because everybody cashed their gold at that time. I mean, all the consumer gold went back into the refineries for cash. Okay, so we don't have enough recycled gold of a certified nature to support the demand. Then what are other options for people in the jewelry industry to buy gold that they know is not going to contribute to funding Russian military aggression?
Right. And I think that's the problem. I think the problem is the term recycled has really gotten lost of really what it means. Really what everyone should be looking for is ethically sourced and ethically, responsibly sourced and non-conflict. That's really what it is. But everyone's put it under a broad brush, including some of the certifications of recycled. That is really the biggest problem, because there's plenty of even artesian mines and all that stuff all over the world where the gold is clean, it's good, it's been sourced properly and all that stuff, and a lot of pipeline.
Well, so Christina Vieja from PACT is in the chat, and she said, yes, let's refer to post-consumer recycled as opposed to it lived as a bar for 2.5 days and then got recycled. Christina Molly's asking a question specific to this topic. She's asking, David, can you speak more about the LBMA's definition of the word recycled and how it's linked to customs definitions?
Well, what from the LBMA's definition, the World Gold Council's definition, I want to pronounce this right, the OCED's definition, investment bars, post-consumer investment bars were considered recycled material. Okay, so what happens is the only one who changed their definition 2 years ago was the RJC. The RJC changed their definition as we spoke in New York. So what happens is when gold comes out of the ground, it usually comes out of a purity of 88 to 92%. Then what happens is it goes through its first refining process, which will take it to what I call investment grade, 395, 295 for investment bars. And so what happens is when we take investment bars and we have to re-refine it again to get it what's called 99.99, 4 nines plus. So to us, it's been refined twice. It's gone through 2 manufacturing processes. Okay, so it came out of the ground at 88, and by the time we have to get it jewelry made, it has to go through 2 manufacturing processes and then refine. Then we have to then pour it into shot form, into casting grain, make fabricated product, make solder. Our thing is at that point, it should be considered recycled metal, which would help the jewelry industry, okay, of the supply of recycled metal. But others have argued the point that that's not considered recycled metal. That is one of the big problems.
Well, and isn't one of the worries, though, that it is because it's been processed twice, but it still hasn't been used for anything other than preparing it for use, that it really isn't recycled, that it's just come out of the ground?
Right. But also, too, is definitions of some certifications. They'll list coins or little investment bars, but mostly coins, eagles, maple leafs, cougarans, as recycled material.
Even though they've been through exactly the same process as bars.
Exactly the same process. So if you don't have those investment bars to feed, to supplement, I'm not even feed, to supplement, because that's really what it comes down to, supplement, you're going to have, that's where I'm saying the industry is going to have a problem. Back in 2010, 11, 12, it wasn't a problem because the scrap was all over the place. When you were selling gold at that time, sometimes when you sold gold back to the bank at a discount, you sold that gold at a discount because they had so much gold coming in. It really comes down to right supply and demand, but there's only certain ways for us to create scrap metal. And what happens is no matter how much gold we sell a manufacturer, they're going to use it into their product. There's not enough scrap there. So for the next time they order, there's enough gold there.
But do we have to call it? So what's I'm seeing another question in the comments saying, well, is there pressure on LBMA to meet the RJC's definition? Is the goal that we be able to tell people it's recycled, or is the goal for it to be post-consumer recycled to fit people's definition of circular economy?
Right. That's the real problem. All the LBMA, the World Gold Council, they all agree with the definition of investment bars. The RJC a couple years ago changed their stance that they agreed with it up to that point also. And then they changed their stance.
So they said it was only post-consumer could be recycled.
Correct.
Okay. To me, and I think I told you this when we discussed this in New York, I'm very comfortable with not being able to call non-post-consumer recycled gold recycled. Because what people want to know with recycled is it a circular economy element, or is this really just a label that makes people feel better? I'm not a fan of the latter. I'm a fan of the circular economy. To me, what I just heard was this difference between how bars are treated and how coins are treated. So are you saying even at RJC, if somebody has taken metal out of the ground and refined it twice to get it to the point where it's jewelry grade and it's a coin, they can still call it recycled? They just can't call a bar that?
That's correct.
Interesting. So the
and also to a little background from United's perspective, we're a COMEX approved. So what happens is all we've done for the past 30 years is do jewelry and pawn. So the bars that we have basically supplied to the COMEX, investment bars, okay, and kilo bars. We can honestly say those kilo bars that are in the depositories are 100% recycled metal. So that's what our story's always been, and we're trying to tell that you know, people are always nervous, you know, where'd the bar come from and all that type of stuff. But I can tell you every bar that sits, every United bar, and some of the other ones in North America here, some of the other refineries that manufacture metal for the banks and for the depositories, they're recycled metal too. So it's very, yes. So it's very difficult, you know, under that. I really think it's the definition of truly what recycled means. And I think that's the confusion with many people that are in the chat and all that stuff is, what does recycled mean? What does versus non-conflict ethically sourced? You know, that to me is the difference. And right now some of the certification companies, stuff like that, there's a struggle who's going to take the lead.
Well, and Cecilia Gardner's speaking to that in the chat. She's saying the industry has a problem because of this definitional ambiguity. So the standard definition has to incorporate only post-consumer material. So recycle would be only post-consumer, and we need to educate the consumer public to that effect. Now, Rob, you were shaking your head. Is that because you're thinking or because you're disagreeing?
No, that wasn't.
That's you thinking.
Reaction. That was, but yeah, I obviously, I think, you know, a lot of the gold, from what I understand, that is called recycled gold, isn't recycled in any way, shape, or form. It's just kind of things that people buy and don't necessarily test the processes of.
So we have this definitional ambiguity. I like that phrase, Cecilia, within recycled, and people are looking to recycled as an option to purchase gold that they can have some confidence is not funding Russian military aggression. We have other types of gold that we can buy, for instance, Fairmine. So, Susan, do you want to speak to some of the artisanal, or any of you? You know, what are some of the artisanal options that people have for buying gold in the jewelry industry now?
Yeah, I mean, Fairmine is something that I use, and I know up until recently, you know, they've been really trying, and still now, trying to get more people to buy Fairmine gold. I mean, there was something where for a while they said, people were saying, oh, there's a shortage of this and that. That's not true. And they've been trying to engage large scale jewelry companies as well and say, meet us where we are and we can grow our capacity if you stick with us and we have an agreement to grow. So they've been wanting to grow. They want people to buy gold. It is available. So, you know, Fairmine gold is the artisanal and small scale mining that's hit the craft code certification. I've been to visit the mines. They're beautiful compared to other mines that I've seen. And, you know, they are supplying work. They're doing it for people with with a lot of environmental safeguards. And you can actually buy eco, which means no mercury use as well, and eco gold that they offer. There's fair trade gold, which is, I think, a little more popular in Europe. And then there's a number of other groups coming out from NGOs that are working to have safe gold sources out of the DRC in Kenya right now. I know people personally that, have mines or work with women miners in many countries right now that aren't certified, and maybe working with groups that, like local environmental NGOs. So there's a lot of options I would like to see grow. Fairmined is the safe option, especially for a small jeweler, for a medium-sized jeweler, somebody who wants to do something other than, recycled. And I was just saying to Dave before the call, I know a number of people, retailers and jewelers, that will only use recycled and looking for a true recycled. But for me, I'm very much in support of ASM, when done well, artisanal small scale miners. And I feel like this is really the fair trade option for us to move forward as a jewelry industry, and how we can make these alliances and really engage in fair trade type of practices.
What Christina Vieja from PACT is also saying in the chat, that refiners are queuing up to take gold from PACT projects. And she says something interesting in her comment. She says this is for reduced mercury and eventually mercury-free gold. So she's suggesting in that comment something I think we all need to think about as an industry, which is, and this, I'm going to quote Christina Miller here, we start where we are. So rather than looking for perfect artisanal sources, look for artisanal sources that are on the path, that have started where they are and are getting better over time, using things like craft code to improve their process. And yes, I was just going to say that Brandy Dowell is here. She's with SCS, and she's posted a link. SCS has recently included artisanal gold mines in their sustainable jewelry standard. So that's an expansion of that standard that is very positive for artisanal gold sources. So thanks for putting the link there, Brandy. Anything else? Like, I'm looking through the chat to see other questions and comments about gold. And it does seem to me that there are more and more artisanal sources opening up. Even just 2 years ago, we kept saying there's not enough artisanal gold to support the demand. But I don't have this number. Do any of you guys have any indication of how much artisanal gold that would fall into like a craft code standard is becoming available, so the jewelry industry could avail itself more of that gold?
From what, I mean, I don't think there's any stats on that, but I would say from what I understand is, one of the interesting things about these projects is they can scale upwards very quickly. So if there is more demand, and I think most people here agree that there should be more demand for these products, which are, we should note, more expensive in some cases than regular gold and require more extensive sourcing procedures and taking procedures, that if there is more demand, they can scale up and increase the amount in the marketplace. So from, last I heard, supply was probably a little bit less than demand. And, they just want more demand because this is something that's, scalable, and you can just keep producing it. And yeah, I agree. It's probably the one of the best options, certainly for gold sourcing, but it is more expensive and it is not easy to necessarily do. And, but I think, people who, I have not, but people who have been to the mine sites are impressed by what they've seen and the effect that it can have. And, it's still very small, still a small dent in artisanal gold production. I mean, there's still so much to do. So it's just kind of a good model that hopefully will spread a little along the chain.
The problem, Andrea, that I see, it really comes down to cost. So what happens is you take the New York guys. they were used to paying $1 or $2 over for an ounce of gold. Okay, that's the way it was. Now, in the last couple of years, it's gone to 5, 10, 15, 20. And these guys are flipping out. When you talk about fair mine gold and all that stuff, the premiums are much more expensive. And that is one of the big problems. So those bigger manufacturers, they're never going to touch that stuff. Even for all the right reasons of why they should, they're not, because of the premiums. I mean, I got guys who beat me up over 10 cents. So when you're asking, your typical guys that have been around casting and all this stuff and trying to educate them on that stuff of how well it is and look for the artesian minings, I mean, I heard the stat that artesian mining, it's like it affects like 100 million people, right? I mean, that's how many people are connected with it. And now what happens is, because there's been such a push for recycled metal, that you don't even put that in the conversation, because everyone wants recycled metal, because that's the way the certifications have kind of pushed it. What Brandy said was great, how they're opening up, with SCS and all that stuff. That's only going to help everyone. And like Susan said, maybe alleviate that stuff, but it's still going to come down to cost. That's really what it's going to come down to. So if it comes down where it's more, as it scales, that the cost can come down, I think it'll definitely have more of a chance to be part of it.
Mary Messier from Tiffany is popping into the chat. I feel like I should click everybody's cameras. I feel like half our audience should actually be on this call with us. So thanks you guys for sharing your insights. What Mary just said is that David's correct. They bought 2,000 ounces of fair mine gold last year. And unless you are a very large company, it's difficult to afford in volumes, I'm presuming. But we can't, this is just me talking. I just don't think we can just turn ourselves to recycled without clear definitions, or all we're doing is fooling ourselves and fooling consumers. I mean, if we don't get to some definitional agreement on what recycled is, then we're cheating, and lying to yourself is like the worst form of lying. One other thing on the gold topic, because I want to move into diamonds, because there's a lot to discuss there. And I want to talk a bit about our standards organizations and where we are with that. There is a Senate bill right now. It's called the Stop Russian Gold Act. The number for it, I'm not going to remember it right now, but it's called the Stop Russian Gold Act. In the links at the end of this call, you'll go to a landing page and you can actually see more information about that. But it would increase the sanctions on gold, making it more difficult, not impossible, but somewhat more difficult for Russian gold to make it to our markets. And honestly, the act itself isn't super strong. But what it would do was it would appoint some treasury, if passed. Treasury would then have some responsibility for looking at the gold flows and would create some enforcement steps. There's no policy right now to limit the inflows of gold from certain locations. So that would be like a first step in policy to trying to do some limitation. If you're interested in supporting that act, you can actually ask your senator to support it. And let's see, there's another, Brandy saying, I'd love to hear you address Christina Molly's question on leadership and Melissa's question on availability. So I'm going to scroll back up and look for Christina. So Christina says, when will leadership emerge on updating the definitions of recycled and on tracing gold from source to refiner, and not just from last point of transit to refiner? And who can we expect to take a lead here? Is it the global finance community? Is it government? Is it UN type program? She doesn't see leadership in jewelry. And we haven't either. When we were doing the global gold transparency letter to the industry, the only people that are paying attention to this right now are investigative journalists and NGOs. Like, there's literally no policy or leadership around this. But I think it's an important industry discussion for us to be having.
I think it's FTC, as I think Christina Vieja put in the chat. But who's going to stand up and get behind that? I mean, we've got JVC, who can be involved in that. But I think that, and this leads into kind of the next discussion, we can't expect people in industry to be standing up for us. I mean, this is like what everyone's been talking about, is just, why did you expect people that have a different interest than you and have corporate interests that are different than you to stand up for something that you believe in? Everybody's got to stand up for themselves. Let's all go ahead and write letters to FTC. I think they just went through a round of Rob, everyone else would know. I can't remember when they went through their last round of assessments, but everybody get on it. Let's not keep on handing over our views and our voices to other people. So we need to do it. We need to all get on it as jewelers, no matter where you are in the industry.
And Sue, I agree with that. The problem is from our standpoint, I mean, I've been beating this drum because this is one of what the company wanted for the past 6 months. And what happens is people, when you have the conversation, they agree with you. And we've actually begged for seats at the table. We want to go, we want to be at the table. Sometimes what happens is the table shut down, the door is closed, and people that are making these decisions are not listening. You don't even get a chance to say your piece and have these conversations because you don't know where to go. It is very confusing. And that's the big problem. So even if you have a bunch of people who want to get together, from jewelry manufacturers to refiners to metal suppliers, I'll take North America, just North America's standpoint. There's nowhere to go to. We can talk amongst ourselves, but going back to on the chat on the leadership thing, yeah, that's a big deal. And what happens is we do need help in this, and then we have to have people who are actually listening, that are actually understanding, that actually. For the people that need to listen, they need to come from our industry. They need to be part of it. They need to help form that and all that stuff, because the people who know best are the people who live it every day.
Well, and what we've discovered is when you're talking to people outside the industry about these problems, they can't even wrap their mind around how the industry works. We have to go through this enormous translation and explanation process. But Dave, you raise a really interesting point. On the diamond side, as frustrated as I know I am with them right now, there's the World Diamond Council, there's the Natural Diamond Council, there are these councils. In gold, we don't have that kind of organization and leadership. So that's a problem to be solved. I want to go to Melissa Quick's question. She said, Melissa's a retailer in Chicago, Steve Quick jeweler. She says, I hear what everyone's saying, but I'm at the end of the supply chain working directly with the consumer. I know I need to do a better job of sourcing responsibly, but there are so few options as far as designers and manufacturers go. I honestly don't know how I could stock my store if I only featured fair mind and fair trade. And that is a legitimate problem for people serving consumers.
Yeah, I mean, just to kind of talk about some of the things that are raised here. I mean, I think, I think first of all, there are industry organizations that are some are more responsive than others, but I do urge people who feel strongly about these things to get involved in a, not just in a letter writing way, but in a more official way. This stream is offline. Is that okay?
No, we're there.
In a more official way to, get involved in committees and stuff like that. I mean, this stuff is more open because it's a relatively small group of people who get involved with these organizations. So I do think there are perhaps opportunities for people who want to volunteer time, whether it's for Ethical Metalsmiths or Susan's conference or some of the bigger organizations, the more established organizations. I do think there is time for, room for people to get involved. I would say also, regarding the FTC, they have a very limited, the way they define things is how they think the consumer will look at it. So I think from that standpoint, you have to really keep in mind, and it's a very kind of long, drawn out decision process over there. That said, it is overhauling its so-called green guides, and arguably this would fall under that. So that's something that, any person can, submit information or opinions. As an American citizen, you have a right to speak up on the federal decision-making process. So, I think, I think it's very important for people in the industry to get involved in, both government and in organizations and make your voices heard. All the people who started in these organizations started, like you guys, like as small people. There is the World Gold Council, I should mention, and there is the LBMA, which is actually done some
a larger leadership
Yeah, that's a mining organization, and LBMA is has actually taken a pretty strong stand on Russian gold. So yeah, just get involved. Don't you're not going to win every time, but I think it's very important that people keep their voice, keep fighting, keep out there, and keep for what they believe in. And as far as yeah, you're not going to be able to get everything fair mine gold. I think the important point is continuous improvement, is to keep asking questions, is to keep talking to your suppliers, is to look into certification schemes, whether it's the RJCs or other ones, or look at ethical metalsmiths or some of the people there. I mean, I think there are a lot of resources out there, and it's nobody. I don't think anybody expects perfection at this point, because it's just not. We're just not close. But I think you need, there's a lot more people can do, and it unfortunately takes quite a bit of time, and you might have to hire somebody who specializes in that, but it's out there.
So I want to keep Cecilia Gardner's question top of mind, because I want to turn the conversation to diamonds, because there's a lot of us on this call, I know, live our lives worrying about making jewelry supply chains more responsible. But now we have this heightened pressure of worrying about the diamonds and gold that we're using funding the killing of civilians and the aggression against Ukraine. So Cecilia's question is, what is the larger question? What is the jewelry industry's moral obligation to address Russian-sourced diamonds and gold? And if we agree on the morally right obligation, what are the actions to fulfill that moral obligation? This is something that I've been thinking about nonstop since February the 24th. So I want to start talking about diamonds for a moment, because not only is Alrosa, 30% of diamond production?
Yeah.
Okay, then 90% of the world's finished diamonds are flowing through India. India is not only not sanctioning Russia, they're working on a rupee ruble scheme to shore up the ruble and really try to steal market share from Antwerp, as is the UAE. The UAE is not as big a player in that role, but we've got all our diamonds, 90% of our diamonds are flowing out of India, and the sanctions that are in place do not address things that have been substantially transformed in India. So I want us to be thinking about Cecilia's question as we discuss what I call the diamond problem. What do we do?
I'll just jump in kind of holistically on all of that. And as I said earlier at the beginning, I believe we absolutely have a moral obligation to stop funding Russia's war against Ukraine by purchasing our gold and diamonds. If you have jewelry manufactured in India, I would stop ordering it now. That's it. Other companies in other industries, in fashion, other luxury companies have pulled all their products out from Russia. Chanel today said that they weren't even going to sell Chanel purses and goods to Russians, and the bloggers were upset about that. Now that's just, an example that's more extreme than I can imagine jewelry would ever go to. But just stop ordering the gold and diamonds that are going to fund the war. And I think, everyone keeps talking about, and I hear the jewelry is going to cost more for this or for that all the time. Jewelry is meant to be precious. And we have to think about what we want to do morally as a jewelry industry. It's not everybody's responsibility here to feed the corporate machines or to keep the mining companies alive. I think that jewelry has to control the dialogue, not mining companies. And mining companies have always been involved in geopolitics, and people ignore it. People ignored the flags and the signs that Alrosa was not a responsible company before this. They were on all of the boards, paying everybody in the jewelry industry, on every single board of directors, still on World Diamond Council board of directors. People in the industry are still giving that a voice. So, sorry, we're supposed to launch into diamonds, but there are some things that we can do right now to stop that flow. But people need to step up to the plate and do what is right to do.
And it's challenging with the ties that the jewelry industry has to Alrosa. I mean, Alrosa has responsibility problems before this. They were funding Russian military building of weapons and submarine. They actually have a diamond submarine that was largely supported by Alrosa money. They had the Mir mine collapse in 2017. There's a massive tailings leak in 2021 at the Katoka mine in Angola that they still have not addressed. So we have problems with Alrosa before this even happened. And Alrosa is continuing to benefit from its diamond money, 33% owned by Russian Federation, another 33% owned by the Republic of Yakutia. And they have paid significant amounts to increase combat readiness of Russian submarines. So and that's validated. That's out. I don't know if you guys have seen the new International Peace Information Service research that documented all of these things. So I'm going off of citations. How do we address this as an industry? What is our moral obligation? Because if we stand up and say we're not going to deal in this trade, there is a corporate cost to that, even for small companies.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I agree. We should not buy Russian origin diamonds. Certainly not now. Certainly not when the war is continuing and we see some of the atrocities we're seeing. I mean, I think that's a pretty easy call. I mean, there are tools that depend on sometimes suppliers' warrants, but that do specify that you don't want Russian diamonds, and I think people should take advantage of them, and they should be clear to their suppliers that this is something that is a red line. That at this point, with possible sanctions coming on Russian diamonds, and the idea that you might have to prove that your diamonds aren't Russian to enter the United States. I mean, this is a serious issue. From trade gossip, I have heard, and maybe we'll understand better when we see Alrosa's financial results, and those are sometimes a little iffy because they can kind of sell internally to the Kremlin, but I have heard internally that a lot of people are staying away just because they consider the whole thing toxic, for reputational reasons, for moral reasons, for business reasons, whatever the reasons. A lot of people, it is not so easy just to say, okay, I'm going to deal in rupees now, and I'm not going to deal in SWIFT. And there's talk about Alrosa offering credit. Well, it's not that easy to set up credit. So it is, I do think people kind of in an informal way are starting to kind of move away. I don't think their sales are zero, but I think, we are starting to see a little bit of action on that front. And, I just would urge anybody watching who's concerned about what's going on. And this goes beyond obviously the atrocities we've seen. This is possible something that could lead to nuclear war. And, this is really a very, very serious issue. I mean, Russia is basically our enemy right now, who's, could be messing around with our cyber systems and stuff like that. So I would be very, very cautious. I'd be very clear to suppliers that this is something that you do not want them to be involved with. And, again, unfortunately, there are tools that offer traceability. They're not perhaps as extensive as we would like, but they do exist. And I offer people, who, the more concerned you are, the more you should look into this. And somebody asked a question about why should Russian miners suffer because of the problems in Ukraine, which nobody should suffer. We don't want anybody to suffer necessarily. I think first of all, a lot of these mining companies are incredibly profitable, especially Arrosa. So it can certainly, continue to pay its people. But as far as the larger issue, this is, unfortunately, sanctions are terrible. They're not good. They don't. The
war is terrible,
right? Right. But the other option is going to war, and I think most people think that would be an even bigger toll. So unless people have other ideas on how to stop this terrible thing, that's what we're going to unfortunately have to do. So people, I mean, I think you shouldn't be waiting for the government to take action. You should be taking action and doing as much as you can to clear your supply chain. It's never going to be perfect. It's never going to be, exact, but there are tools you can use, and there are things you can use to get going.
I think we need to continue considering this Alrosa problem, though, beyond just this immediate conflict. Say the conflict stopped tomorrow. We still have an issue with Alrosa being a likely contributor to Russia's production of nuclear weapons. In 2008, they obtained a license to mine, process, and store uranium. And then in 2009, they entered into a partnership agreement with Rosatom, which is Russia's nuclear agency. So as an industry, we need to start having doing some real soul searching about our supplier that, in Alrosa, and, be prepared to address that and to call our industry associations to task to be responsible with us. Go ahead, Susan.
Well, it's really hard. I'm mad. We had last year 2 different panels with Alrosa. One was actually called "Who Funds the Jewelry Industry? Governments, Militaries, and Oligarchs." Guess
she means the Chicago conference.
I don't know who didn't show up. RJC didn't show up. Diamonds Do Good didn't show up. Natural Diamond Council didn't show up. Nobody showed up from Alrosa. People I've been out to dinner with stopped, answering phone calls. I mean, Dave, you talk about not having a spot at the table and having doors shut on you. That's what happens. We also had something on the Katoka mine spill. Yeah. Now, let's just single in on one thing here. Alrosa was intentionally and knowingly irresponsible. They could have reported this spill.
They had awareness of the problem early.
And this is where a mine spill turned the tributaries to the Congo River Basin red. Hippos floated to the surface and people died. Now, RJC knew about that. They were on the board of directors. They were on Natural Diamond Council board of directors, Diamond Do Good, the board of directors of all those places. And they sat there and nobody said anything or blinked an eye. Now, that's not acceptable. None of that is responsible. And all of that is our industry endorsing irresponsible behavior knowingly. And that's got to stop. And we could simply stop that by knowing who's on the board of directors. Let's not put anybody on a board of directors if they are incorporated in the British Virgin Islands or the Bahamas. I have LLCs. I'm not incorporated there. I mean,
Delaware works fine.
Things that we could do to clean up our act as a jewelry industry.
Delaware isn't great either, but yes.
But it's better than the British Virgin Islands.
It's better than the VVI, correct.
No, but Susan's point is correct, that we have a responsibility to pay attention to some of these things. And it's not hard to get the information. But it does require making hard choices, which kind of blew up the RJC in the last couple of weeks. Now, they say they were being slow and responsible. But I'm sorry, when there's an invasion of another country and people are dying, is that the time to move slowly and make sure your legal butt is covered? Now, Rob, you did put out a great article this week on, let's figure out how to strengthen the RJC and not just blow it up. And I happen to personally be in agreement with you on that. I don't think blowing up the RJC is the answer. To Brandy's point earlier in the comments, and perhaps a few others, I'm going to just put the link to Rob's article right here. More associations isn't the answer. The RJC is an imperfect standards organization. So is LBMA. So is FAIR. I mean, they're all imperfect. The question is, how can we take what we've got? In my mind, how do we take what we've got and make it more responsible, better, more accountable, less subject to corporate self-interest? How do we do that?
I mean, you have to look at it and watch. I mean, I think, look, in this particular instance, RJC has now basically acknowledged that there was, there are gaps in its bylaws that didn't necessarily meet these current standards, and that it needs to have a better, complaint and review process. And I think, we all hope and more transparency and more communication. And I think I'm hopeful that will happen. People have indicated to me that that's kind of the direction it's going in. I mean, I do think it can play an important role, and I hope it continues to play an important role. I think it's, I think I think it was obviously caught in a tough spot. They got a law firm, and the law firm said, look, your bylaws are need to be updated and fixed. And I think, Alrosa's gone now, which I think we all agree is good.
To Christine's point, GRIB is still in.
GRIB is still in, yes. And I think that's probably another issue. But the kind of longer term, issue is, do these organizations meet a certain set of standards? Okay, you meet this, you do this, you do this, then you're okay, right? So what is perhaps needed is more of a way to say, okay, this is, when something is caught doing something, or the ownership is, ownership should be a baseline issue, in my opinion, just because, you can have a fine operation, but if you're owned by the mafia, then it's not, that's not okay, right? Or the Russian government, or, whoever you don't like. So I think that it needs updating, and I think I'm hoping this will strengthen it, because I think it is an important organization that, as Brandy said, needed is important. It sets a baseline. Is it a perfect baseline? No, but you have at least a baseline throughout the entire industry. So yes, was it a tough decision though? I mean, I'm not privy to what the lawyers said. To me, it wasn't a tough decision. I think to most of us, it wasn't a tough decision. The lawyers, as she knows, lawyers can be very, sticklers for certain language, and that's what they told them.
But
and I think I do think it was a look. It was a fair. It was. They should have. In retrospect, if a law firm is telling you have all these gaps in your bylaws, that's a problem.
But they don't have to solve the bylaws to make a proper moral stance. I think a lot of us watched what just happened with RJC and said they were hoping like hell the problem would go away, because they have a board that's so seriously vested in their own corporate self-interest that they really weren't behaving like the people in charge of the COP. A lot of us watched that and said, they are actually in conflict internally. And can they be a standards bearer for the industry when they can't get past their own freaking internal conflict and corporate self-interest? And
we'll have to see going forward. But I think, if you look at some of the big players in the organization, none, there weren't necessarily interests in, direct tie, even though I kind of mentioned that in my article. Signet had already cut ties with Arrosa. Obviously, De Beers is a competitor to Arrosa. You don't have to have everyone in self-interest have a problem. People tell me it was a real issue, right? And I don't necessarily think that absolves the RJC. It shows that there was a problem with its bylaws, which is a serious problem. Now, lawyers don't make moral decisions, correct? But
so as a person who's been a CEO,
right? And Alrosa, from what I understand, is still part of a lot of groups like the UN Global Compact, and there's a bunch of groups that Alrosa is still a member of that it hasn't been kicked out of.
Not saying that RJC is the only one, but it was a failure of leadership. It wasn't a failure.
Something was wrong. Look, it was something. Someone. You don't have a thing like this and say, okay, it was fantastic. I'm just saying that clear. That's the real shame of it. That that because of whatever happened 15 years ago, how it was set up, that there was apparently, from what I hear, unless everybody's lying to me, gaps in these bylaws, right? And I don't think that absolves the organization. And I think in the end, it's gone anyway. And I think there was apparently the threat of legal action, to be clear on this, because it would have hurt Alrosa commercially, and it will hurt Alrosa commercially to be out of the RJC, right? So,
but I would like to see an industry initiative pressure to help the RJC be a better organization. I don't want to just assume that they will naturally be better after having gone through this. I think
you watch
RJC,
check them out.
Purpose, let's live up to it. But Christina's pointing out in the comments, KP and WDC are bigger failures than the RJC, and she's not wrong. And
but the KP Civil Society is not even being listed. It's not even, the KP Civil Society Coalition isn't even raising the issue. So
well, and there's some serious problems with the committees that Russia chairs in the KP. I don't.
People won't go to their meetings. Yeah.
Blew up now, but it could blow up because of this.
Yeah. I will say that, the object of sanctions is not necessarily to take every dollar out of the Russian economy. If you make a moral choice that you don't want to support Russia, I agree with you, right? I think that's a fine moral choice. But, I think if you look at how governments around the world have acted, they have not tried to destroy the Russian economy overnight. That's just not what they want to do. It's the 7th largest economy in the world, and you risk massive failures. And I think Brandy actually brings
that's a good point. We're talking about the RJC board here.
People at the RJC. There's a lot of good people on the board. It's not,
good
this was, whether it was a failure of governance, of moral leadership, of legal advice or bylaws or whatever, it was clearly there was something wrong will happen.
And I can tell you, those good, hardworking people, Brandy's whole comment was, can we please make it clear you're referring to the RJC board and not the dedicated staff? And she's absolutely right. I can tell you that those dedicated staff members have been reaching out to us and saying, do everything you can to change the board because they can't get their work done, the things they believe in.
Let me just to say, Cecilia, I said I agree it's aimed at hurting or ruining the Russian economy. I don't think it's aimed to completely destroy the Russian economy. That's would be my point, which I don't think because if they did, they could have. There's a lot more they could do, and which they haven't regarding oil and other commodities.
We also have countries like so Europe needs to get out of winter, and
I can. She can call me up later and argue.
Well, Belgium's been very uncomfortable with more sanctions against diamonds because they're worried about jobs in their own country. Again, there's a lot of self-interest for everyone at play.
Yeah, and I think that's where, that's obviously the problem is that, there is obviously self-interest here. And I think what we as an industry need to do and to make sure is, look, there are some people who will buy Russian diamonds under certain circumstances. There's some people who will buy Russian diamonds now. There's some people who won't. We have to make sure that people we're dealing with aren't buying Russian diamonds and have that as a baseline standard, and do as much as you can to, and the people who are currently doing it, you should make sure that they're exposed and people know about it.
So we're at the top of the hour and we've only been able to slightly scratch the surface of these problems, and we certainly haven't come up with solutions. But you can just see from the comments how many people are thinking about these problems and are bringing very important arguments to the table, things that we need to do as an industry to be more morally responsible during this Russian conflict and beyond, because this is a problem that will not go away when the war stops, which hopefully is very, very soon.
And you know, I would look. These issues are not going to be hard to solve, right? And I urge people to, you know, get involved in making a positive difference, whether it be through your sourcing, through advocacy, through, you know, playing supporting worthy initiatives like Moya Gems and Fairmine Gold and all these other things. I think, you know, people will, you know, that's one way you get the industry to respond, as well as doing things like making sure that your suppliers aren't using Russian diamonds, which I think is something that is, it's not 100% doable, but it is possible.
And as an industry, we don't need to there's a certain obsequiousness that we bring to our big organizations. You know, we're a small industry, and when you have a small pond, you can have some pretty big fish. It's on all of us to challenge our big fish and tell them what we expect of them. That is another way that we're going to get change.
Listen, this is my take on this. I believe, like, for both me and Susan, we've both said in this, Rob, we've tried to get involved. We've tried to do things, and it goes on deaf ears. That doesn't mean we stop trying and all that stuff. At the end of the day, some of the certifications basically got beer muscles at the end of the night at the bar to break it down into its that. And that's what's happened. So, yes, do we need the third party? Do we need the certifications? One of the problems with certifications, I got to tell you, is the audit process itself. The auditors that come in a lot of times aren't properly trained, have not been around. They do what I call, they turn and burn them because they don't stay long. And what happens is, and I'll give a shout out to Brandy. Brandy was with RJC for a long time. North American representative, you had someone to call, someone to contact, someone to go to. We don't have that anymore. She's not with them anymore. She's with SCS. And Brandy was fantastic at doing that stuff. We had a point of contact.
She has a replacement, but yes, correct.
Yes, but I'm just saying but Brandy was as an institution for them, to be honest with you. So that's part of the point. Everyone knew her, and she went to all the functions and all that type of stuff. So she got involved in all that stuff. And that's where RJC, if you remember, that's where they really grew. That's how they really grew, because they had what I call boots on the ground. They had boots on the ground of people that were going to all these conferences, these state conferences, these shows. They were doing speaking engagements. They were getting involved. You don't have that anymore. You haven't had that for a couple of years. Now, COVID might have been part of the issue. The pandemic, less availability on some of these shows and these platforms. But, you know, we in that 2 years, or 18 months, 2 years, we've gone backwards. We've gone backwards on this. So it does make it difficult. I can see the frustration on Susan's face and on myself, you know, because we are at the table. We are saying it all the time.
Yeah, I think there are a certain I agree with you in certain ways the industry has gone backwards, and I think in some ways it's gone forwards. I think it's always going to be mixed, right? And I think, you know, keep applying pressure, you know, and certainly I would say the U.S. groups like JA, American Gem Society, JVC. I mean, I think, you know, they are very open to feedback. So I would certainly talk to them, since we are all American citizens, and MGSA, I should mention. So,
well, and I'd like to challenge all of our associations to do a better job of looking at this. You know, we have industry associations that have dedicated memberships and a certain amount of strength, and we need to see more energy around responsibility when it comes to what these associations are doing. And sometimes taking a stand pisses people off.
Yeah, and I think, you know, you look at AGS. AGS formed 75 years ago because of problems with gemology, and those were considered the ethical issues at the time of ripping off the consumer, right? And I believe groups like Ethical Metalsmiths and what Susan's done, her Responsible Jewelry Conference, I think those in the future will be the predominant industry organizations as far as going forward, as far as leading the dialogue, because I think that's where the energy is. I think a lot of the labeling issues and stuff like that are mostly, not 100%, but mostly settled. But I think that's where we're going forward. And these aren't easy issues; they won't be solved overnight. But I ask the people take out use their anger in possibly productive ways.
All right, Susan.
Susan wants to say anything.
No, I agree. And I just want to say MJSA has not been pay to play and has been an open forum. So thank you for that, MJSA. But I think I may have already pounded this into the ground, but pay to play is the root of a lot of the problems right now in our industry, whether it's being on board of directors or whether it's conversations that are pay to play. And we've got to clean it up. There's some simple things we can do to clean it up. So thank you for the open forum.
I could just say that, I work for a major jewelry publication, and my email is very reachable, and I'm always interested in people's opinions. Please reach out to me in a nice way, please. Now, I hear from Susan. I don't think I've ever actually heard from David, but I'd be happy to hear from him. And I hear from Andrea, and I'm happy to hear from all of you people.
Don't worry, Rob. You're going to hear from me.
Oh, good. All right. There you go.
It's all good.
So we need to wrap. We are 8 minutes over the hour. Our audience has hung with us for the whole thing. I really appreciate you being here. And for all of the co-presenters in the audience, we couldn't have done this without you. So I'll end with a couple of notes. One, say something, do something, join something. Go to the Chicago conference. Susan and I would love to see you there. Write to your senator, write to leaders of your industry associations. I echo Susan's thank you to MJSA. They have allowed their education program to be more and more and more about responsibility issues, opened this topic up to the industry. MJSA has been very supportive. Ethical Metalsmiths, they're just, these are important things for you to participate in. When we get together, we have a voice. And don't stop having the conversation, even though it's frustrating, because all the best things we accomplish are difficult. And with that, I would like to thank my guests because you guys have been great. I'd like to thank Susan Wheeler, who's the founder of the Chicago Responsible Jewelry Conference and the Responsible Jewelry Transformative, and David Siminski with United Precious Metal Refiners, and Rob Bates, who's the news director for JCK. If you'll wait until I kick you out, as opposed to closing your window now, you'll go to a page from today. So you can get all of the links there. So thanks, you guys, so much. I really appreciate you. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Have a good rest of the day.
Bye-bye.